Welcome to Novelist Spotlight. This is Mike Consul, your host. In addition to being the host of this podcast and interviewing novelists, I am a novelist myself. I have 3 published novels. My latest is titled Lolita Firestone, a supernatural novel, and it is set in Sedona, Arizona and Cairo, Egypt. My previous novel is titled Family Recipes, a novel about Italian culture, Catholic guilt, and the culinary crime of the century. And my first novel is named Hardwood, a novel about college basketball and other games young men play. And that story deals with issues ranging from depression and racism to sex, religion, and university politics. All 3 novels are listed in the episode notes. I hope you will buy them, I hope you will read them, and I hope you will thoroughly enjoy them. Now, on with our program. In the spotlight is Paula Treick DeBoard. She is a bookstore owner and a fiction writer here in Northern California. In fact, right in my hometown, Modesto, California. She's opened a new bookstore called Bookish. We're going to find out why somebody opens a bookstore these days. We've seen a lot of bookstores go out of business, but at the same time, there has been activity in the bookstore business. They tend to be smaller. They tend to be more niche. And they tend to be more connected to the community. And one of the things we're going to do is talk to Paula about why she started that bookstore, what kind of features has she brought to the bookstore to make it successful, or she's working on making it successful because it's practically a brand new store. It opened very recently, and she'll be joining us from one of the back rooms at the bookstore. And in addition to that, her love of books is pretty obvious when you consider that she's written 4 novels. We're going to talk about her writing. She's also working on a new book, which would be her 5th book. We'll ask about that and see what she can reveal about that. And all things bookstore, writing, literary, you name it. Paula, welcome to the program.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You bet. So I've been in your bookstore just one time, but I was drawn to it, of course, because people told me about the bookstore. I wanted to go see it for myself and take a look at what we have new right here in Modesto, California. Let's start with your motivation. You have the lovely bookstore there. Right off the bat, I saw you have a back room that's a children's section. What motivated you to start a bookstore, especially when there's so much talk about how difficult it is to really make a bookstore successful these days?
I mean, part of it was probably just hubris, honestly, and like me thinking I can make this thing work. Yeah,
What
also,
gave you that confidence? What gave you that confidence? Do you feel
I
very connected to the community and a lot of people who
yeah, a
you
couple
thought
of
you could
things.
turn into patrons?
I I've never been a business owner. I've never been a bookstore owner, but I did always think like if I opened a bookstore, and I've been talking about this for years with my husband, it would be in the town we live in. I couldn't go do this somewhere else. Like I feel like I know these people, I know what this town is and what we need and what people are looking for. So yeah, that's and also I couldn't open a business in any other field because I know nothing about anything other than books. So this was literally, this is literally the place for me.
Talk about you know this town, you know this place. What is Modesto? Tell us what you know about Modesto.
Yeah, I've lived in Modesto for most of my life. I was born in Ohio, actually, and I have my formal education outside of the state. But I've lived here for a long time. Been married and, married a local guy. I worked at the Modesto Bee and wrote for the Modesto Bee as a freelance writer for years and really got close to the community through, being involved in the newspaper. Modesto gets such a bad reputation and possibly deservedly so. For
What is a bad reputation for people who don't live here? What's the
uh,
bad rap?
for we are sometimes known for things like being the least literate city in the United States, or the highest rate of auto theft, or things like that. We tend to have these negative things said about us that I don't know. Perhaps there's some statistics that prove they're true, but the Modesto I know really isn't like that. There's a vibrant arts community here. There's a lot of really great nonprofits and talented people. There's a lot of makers and artists. And I think you kind of have to scratch the surface a little bit because I do know people who live in Modesto who are not connected to any of those things. So I think you have to look a little bit to find it at times, but we have a really vibrant community, including like poetry slams every year that are sold out. Lots of reading and writing groups, tons of book clubs. I'm getting to know more and more of those through the bookstore. So I think there's so much that kind of combats that negative
So
reputation.
you're connecting these book clubs and readership groups to the bookstore.
Yeah, well, we're meeting a lot of them through that. Like people are coming in to us and ordering books for their book clubs. But we also decided, one of the things we wanted to do with this space is make it a space where community members could come and would feel like they're not just coming and getting a book and leaving. So we have like tables for people to sit at. We have, drinks and snacks and things like that. And like some cozy, corners where people can sit on a couch. So just making it an inviting space like that. We've also brought in, book clubs who meet here regularly now. And we're beginning in a couple of weeks, hosting our own book clubs, which like filled up. We just did, free tickets online and they sold out instantly. So we have a lot of interest in community activities here.
Now, you mentioned your husband. I got to meet your husband when I came into the bookstore. And was he on board right away, or did he take some convincing?
I'm so fortunate that I married someone who always says, "Oh, sure, go ahead," no matter what crazy thing I say. But he and I have been kind of in this from the beginning. I think I was a little more determined to like really push the button and get it, off the ground, so to speak. But he and I have always, we're both book lovers. Everywhere we go, we end up, seeing what local bookstores are there and checking them out. And kind of along the way, maybe we became a little bit of bookstore critics, in a gentle way, but like, oh,
You
we
saw
love how,
what they were doing right and wrong. You probably
yeah,
started
exactly.
absorbing some
Right.
of that, like
It's
they're making a mistake not doing this or that. So
right.
you did now that was informal research. You and your
Yes.
husband like to go to bookstores. You pick some stuff up, just in terms of rights and wrongs that you see. Did you do any other research prior to starting your bookstore? Did you talk to bookstore owners? Did you
Yeah.
read publisher? What's the what
Yeah.
is the industry journal for bookstores?
Well, there's an industry association called the American Booksellers Association, and I joined that, about a year and a half ago, and just as an individual member. So I was just there to basically learn things. And they do have like an opening a bookstore kit that's kind of like all the stuff you need to know to become a business owner and to become involved in this business, all the data, everything from how many books you can have per square foot, just to kind of help you plan out inventory and things like that, to like, sales data and how to make connections with publishers. So I did, I'm kind of a nerd and I did just like study how to do this first of all. And then I reached out to a bookstore, the closest to me, independent new bookstore was in Elk Grove, California, which is about an hour north of Modesto. And so I reached out to them last summer and said, "Hey, could I like intern in your bookstore and just kind of follow you around and learn things?" And I spent last summer doing that. They were amazing folks and so generous with their time. And that's been true basically of the entire book community. There's also a great few websites on, or I should say groups on Facebook that there's one called Independent Booksellers, that just, it's just people in the business talking about their business and answering questions and helping each other out. And I'm on that site pretty much constantly,
Hmm,
just gleaning information from people. So
interesting.
there's a lot of people talking about it. It's a real industry and it's kind of a niche industry. I mean, just because you can sell books doesn't mean you can sell something else and vice versa. So it's really like learning what the market is and what are some good sales techniques and things like that.
Yeah, so it is a lifestyle business when you say nobody opens a bookstore to get rich, just like nobody opens a winery to get rich, but it's a lifestyle.
Right.
Um, so you opened Bookish, your bookstore, when?
So our official opening was on April 4, so just over 2 months ago.
Okay, so you're very new. And you are stock it with what? What are the do you have fiction and nonfiction? Do you have certain genres you emphasize? Do you have categories like self-help and travel? Talk about the inventory.
Yeah, so all of the above we have. So we do have for adults fiction and nonfiction. Our emphasis in fiction has been more in the romance and fantasy side, although we have a lot of general fiction as well. We carry young adult fiction and nonfiction, and also we have a huge kids section with pretty much all categories of nonfiction in there. And then in our general kind of nonfiction for adults, we have, a smaller selection of things, but everything from memoir to history to current events, politics, cookbooks, travel, hobbies. So we're a new and used bookstore. So kind of the fun for me is that I'm the buyer for the store too. It's also a lot of work to do all of this at once, I've learned, but so I get to kind of be looking for what's new, what's coming up, what are trends, what's selling in the store. And our used books, that's just kind of a lot of fun. People bring in books to us, or we go out and buy used books, and it's just there's a lot of, really hidden gems out there that it's like,
I
oh, I can't.
bet. So I've heard, yeah, that there's a lot of people who have books that they don't even realize the value of them.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can go to a garage sale and it's like, whoa, looks like a first edition Hemingway or whatever.
Yeah.
And they just don't, it's just something they hung around and were never the one who bought it, maybe never read it,
Right.
but they possessed it, and it was an opportunity for the person coming through to buy. Um, Now, what romance and fantasy? Because, well, romance is a huge genre. Is that one of the reasons you emphasize that because you know it's going to bring a lot of foot traffic?
Yeah, there's just a huge amount of readership in the romance and fantasy, and we actually usually call them romantasy genre. And a lot of that is kind of spurred on by, like, say, sites like TikTok, where people are going on there, like book influencers, right? They're reviewing books, they're really hyping books that are coming out, and a lot of those happen to be in those genres. So there's a huge kind of readership that's come to books through TikTok, which I think is kind of fascinating. And also, like, these are younger people. I'm 48. These people are a lot younger than I am. So I think that bodes well for the book industry overall.
Now, I suspect that the How to Open a Bookstore kit from the Booksellers Association might have said, be sure to have a children's section, have things for kids to do because parents are looking to take their kids somewhere where they can basically have them spend an hour or 2 hours, and the parents come with them, and the parents need something to do, and they're going to start browsing. Is it something along those lines? Does
Yeah.
everybody, would you be foolish to open a bookstore without having a kids section?
I mean, there are obviously a lot of bookstores that have no kids section. They cater to their own clientele. I just think in our community, particularly, parents are always looking for things to do with their kids. We have a new children's museum that's opened here recently. It's been really popular. So that's obviously wonderful. But other than that, there haven't, especially during the summer, there's not a lot for parents to do with kids. And so we've been doing like twice weekly story time. We have a bilingual story time. Um, and we just have a kids area where kids can sit and draw. So they can color. We have some coloring books and paper and stuff out there. And they hang out there being adorable, and their parents go around, shopping. So it's good for everyone, I think.
Now, you don't have a lot of square footage. Most bookstores do not. It's exceptions are, the Barnes and Nobles of the world and the former Borders of the world. So you have to be quite prudent about what you put on the shelves. And if somebody comes in, they say, gee, I'm looking for something from Norman Mailer.
Yeah.
You might or might not have that, or you might have his two most popular books, but nothing else. Well, I've already read those. How do you deal with that kind of a situation where somebody has a favorite author, they've come in, you have limited book space, so you might not have that author at all, or you might have only one representative book from that author. What do you find that to be a problem, or what's your strategy for dealing with that?
Yeah,
Sorry, I don't have it. You'll have to order online.
yeah. So actually, we have that problem a lot because we are a small space. We have about 5,000, a little more titles in here overall. So obviously, that's not going to be every book. And we usually only carry, maybe, unless it's a new book, one or two copies of a book. So we kind of have a very fast moving inventory in that sense, where we're keeping on top of that. But in that scenario, if somebody came up looking for like execution or song, right, or mail,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh shoot, we don't have that. We are able to order just about any book through like our wholesalers and so on, and get it within 2 to 3 days. So we do a lot of special orders for people, and then we just give them a call when the book comes in. So they can also go on our website. We have our full inventory up there. So people are often looking for our books on there. And they'll email us like, do you have this book in a paperback? So we get a lot of traffic on the website, and then
When
kind
you
of.
do that, when you do the ordering,
Yeah.
who are you ordering that book from? Are you ordering it directly from the publisher? Are you ordering it from the Independent Bookstores Association? Do you guys have, I mean, you don't want to just give that business to Amazon, correct?
Yeah, right. We're not ordering from Amazon. They're doing entirely their own and different thing. So we're ordering directly from publishers, if possible, if we can do that. So I have setting up accounts still, we're only 2 months into this, so there's still a number of publishers I'd like to set up accounts with. But we do have an account with Ingram, which is kind of the largest book wholesaler in the US, and they have a warehouse in Oregon, which is pretty close by, so we can get things very quickly from there. And they work with pretty much every publisher. So going through Ingram, we get a little bit less of a discount than if we went through a publisher directly, but also we have a higher chance of finding, we can place one order that has stuff coming from 10 different publishers, and it's very convenient to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and still this has been like one of the learning curves for me, is kind of navigating all the different publishers requirements, like who can return something, what are the shipping terms, and so on. So that's been a little bit of the challenge, but it's coming together.
Now, let's talk about the elements to the bookstore that you put in place to try to make it successful. You've got the children's section, you've got romance, fantasy and romance, which are big categories and create foot traffic. You've integrated into the community through book clubs, reading groups, and so on. Are there some other elements you can talk about that are components to your business plan that you're hoping will make your bookstore successful?
Yeah, a few things. One thing we wanted to do from the beginning was make this like a bookstore that kind of celebrates Modesto, which again, for previous reasons, has not always been celebrated. So we reached out on our social media to local artists and artisans. So we have a wall of local art that rotates every month with a different artist. Most of the stuff available in our store, like stickers and journals and things like that, do come from local artisans. And gift greeting cards and a whole lot of other things. So that's really cool that we can kind of give a platform to some and highlight some folks in our community. We also have a local author shelf. I know some bookstores kind of stray away from that. It is kind of a lot of work, I will be honest with you, because when a book sells and we have like 90 different authors from the 209 represented on our local author shelf, that is cutting a check to each of those people. So it is a bit of work, but also it's really cool that people, they want to see their book on a bookshelf. People come in and look for a book that they know was written by a local author. That's been really amazing. And one other thing that we are very close to getting off the ground is our coffee service. We have a mobile coffee cart within our store, and we'll just have a small menu of maybe 5 drinks that we're going to debut here in a couple of weeks. But we're working with a local roaster called Valente. They roast out of the Modesto Gospel Mission, which, if you're not in this area, is a mission that is like also a homeless shelter and kind of like job training focus and things like that. And so Valente is a social enterprise. They're not really in it for profit. They train people. They make really good coffee. They've made us a special blend called the Bookish blend that we're selling already the beans for. We
That's
just have
great.
to pass one tiny little health inspection coming up. So, and then we'll be off and rolling.
Talk about the name Bookish. Now, do you say the name of the bookstore is Bookish, or do you say Bookish Modesto?
We just call it Bookish, but yeah, we have Modesto on our signage and everything, just because we are, trying to highlight Modesto. But yeah, we came up with about 3 different names for this bookstore over time, and they kind of changed as our location, as we narrowed down where in town we were going to be located. And then when we finally signed this lease, we had to come up with a name. But I am someone who was called bookish as a child in kind of a negative way. Very, very nerdy. I'm a little introverted. And
You wear glasses and all
I wear
that.
the big
Yeah.
glasses. Right.
It's the revenge of the nerds these days anyway. All the nerds are the billionaires, right?
Exactly.
They're
Well,
the ones
yeah,
who are worth $100 billion of the nerds. The
some of the
people who
nerds
read books and wear glasses. So
are right.
no shame in that. That's a source of pride now.
Yeah. So we just kind of tried to reclaim that. So we're part of, as we call it, the bookish community.
Now, what does success look like for you when you think a year from now, 5 years from now, if you're able to say this thing really worked out for me, what's that success look like? Characterize it for us.
Yeah. I mean, overall, as you've kind of alluded to, independent bookstores, we have a huge competitor, obviously, in Amazon. And I think success is going to look like people coming through our doors on a regular basis. It's not even so much about sales, although that's part of it too. But people coming to the store, they're seeking some kind of connection with someone. You can probably find that book on Amazon. You can probably get it cheaper. Maybe you can get it faster. But it's people coming in and wanting some kind of connection. They're going to have a cup of coffee. They're going to chat with us about a book. They're going to join a book club. They're going to bring their kids in for story time. So just like people through the door, I think, is something we would consider success.
Success, yeah. And I would imagine in 2 years, 3 years, you will be one of the most popular people in Modesto. You'll have all kinds of friends you didn't know you had because they're customers. They just come to hang out and they want to have a cup of the bookish blend of coffee with you and your husband. And I mean, that's part of that lifestyle element that I talked about, just being able to spend time with people and having some common interests, having a belief in books and just liking to hang out in a good space.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Paul. Were you going to add to that?
No, I was just going to say we are also doing some events, like we have live music at night. We have something going on this Friday night, live music from 7 to 9. So we are trying to use the space in all kinds of different ways too. So we kind of designed this to be a flexible space. So all of our bookshelves in the middle of the store are on wheels, for example. Everything can be moved. The space can be made into whatever it needs to be made into for an event. So that's been kind of part of the fun of this. So how this will evolve in the future, I don't entirely know, but I think we have the space for it. And, it's just a matter of imagination of what we can configure.
And you're prepared to respond to market conditions and anything new
Oh,
you
yeah.
learn, you're ready to respond to that. Will you be doing author readings at all? Or is that something that's too complicated? Or I don't know that too many big name authors travel through Modesto or not. Would there be author readings?
We are planning to do author readings, and we're hoping to kind of scoop up some of the traffic that comes into the Bay Area or to Sacramento. So that's something I want to focus on toward the end of the summer and into this fall, is starting some of that. We do have a local author, Audrey Carlin, who's quite famous in the romance world, who's going to be doing
who's been on this podcast, by the way. She was on the podcast several months ago, and a great conversation with her. Yeah, she's very successful at what she does.
Yes, so we're happy to be doing hosting her book signing here for her upcoming release. So
nice. Now, to our listeners, the URL for the bookstore is in the episode notes, but it's simple enough. It's www.bookishmodesto.com. Again, in the episode notes, but so is Paula's URL for her website. As I said at the top, she's a novelist. She's got 4 novels out there. And Paula, tell us about what it is that you write about. I believe I asked you this when I came in the bookstore. I think you said family drama. Is that right? Or is that giving it short shrift?
No, that's quite all right. I do call it family drama. I like to write fiction that I call could be real fiction, stories about people at their kind of best and worst moments and their breaking points. It's probably a little cruel of me as a writer to put people in these situations, but I do like to see what kind of things are possible. So I create characters, put them in a difficult situation, watch them figure it out.
Yeah, no, that's what readers count on. So we'll run, let me just give our listeners the titles of your book. There's Here We Lie. There's also one called The Drowning Girls, drowning as in drowning in water, The Drowning Girls, The Fragile World, and The Mourning Hours, and mourning spelled as in tears flowing, Mourning, The Mourning Hours. Why don't we go through these one by one and you give us just a capsule summary of the concept, Paula. So let's start with Here We Lie, which is a 2018 publication date. So Here We Lie is about what?
Yeah, so that's about two girls who are friends. I should say young women who are friends, and their friendship is torn apart by like a horrible secret. This book was also it was published around the time of like the beginning of the Me Too movement, which was purely coincidental, but was immediately kind of picked up as being, relevant to that time period. So, kind of a weird coincidence in the writing and publishing world.
How about The Drowning Girls, which was 2 years earlier, 2016?
Yeah, Drowning Girls was set in Livermore, California. It was just not too far from here in Modesto. And that story is a story of like a teenage obsession. This one is definitely more of a psychological thriller. It was so much fun to write. Also, part of my hair turned white during it because it was crazy, but writing this book, but I ended up being very proud of it.
How about The Fragile World?
Yeah, The Fragile World, published in 2014. It's the story of a father getting revenge over his son's untimely death. And it's kind of about a family kind of unraveling and coming together.
Mm. And then The Mourning Hours.
Yeah, The Mourning Hours was my baby. It was published in 2013. It was actually my grad school thesis, rewritten about a million times. And that took place in Wisconsin. It's a story of a girl who goes missing during a snowstorm, and her boyfriend is blamed for her disappearance. And it's kind of the fallout for how that affected their families over the next several decades until the truth was revealed.
Now, I should also mention that Paula got her master's in fine arts in fiction writing from the University of Southern Maine, and she also taught writing at the University of California, Merced. And you're working on a fifth book that is a nonfiction book. You told me nothing about that, but I'll squeeze you just a little bit here and ask, what can you tell us about the book without giving it away and somebody getting the jump on you?
Yeah. I appreciate that discretion. So I am working on a book that, well, I think it may be a book. It is at this stage in many pieces, but it is about a true, terrible thing that happened in this area many years ago. And I've kind of started delving into, court records and interviews and things like that. So I'm actually having to do the real work of a researcher and not just Google things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm finding that to be really interesting, pretty challenging, kind of exciting. So all the things at once. And I do feel like a little bit of a, like an imposter in this world. Like I'm a fiction writer trying to take this on, but I feel like this will be a nonfiction story that is kind of told with like the techniques of fiction to make it be interesting and gripping. And so that's kind of what I'm going for with this project.
Right. Like the Executioner's Song, which you mentioned earlier. Or In Cold Blood was the original, really. In Cold Blood, when Truman Capote wrote that one, kind of blew everybody away because it's like, wow, this reads like a novel, but it's the true story of these murderers in Kansas.
Right.
And I mean, it's we've had some major breakthroughs over the years with fiction writing, and who knows what's next. Now, why do you write at all? How did you get in? I mean, what inspires you to write? Because anybody who writes knows it's It's an exacting process. It's not something that's easy to do. It can be really fairly torturous, and a good or bad day is had based on how the writing went that day in many cases. So what got you going? Or, I mean, what are the mental and emotional rewards for you of writing?
I mean, I think I have always been like a storyteller, and I've always appreciated story and wanted to tell story. So that started, when I was very young and was scribbling in notebooks and things like that. And there have been times in my life where I haven't written. I taught high school for a period of like 7 years. I think I wrote like one short story during that time. And I kept saying, I'm going to write on the weekend. Turns out that's incredibly challenging to do. I keep coming back to it though. So I keep feeling like there's a story to tell, and something in me feels like I'm the person to tell this story. And I don't know. I'm happier when I am writing, and it feels right to me to be doing that, even though, as you mentioned, all of the things are true. Like writing is lonely, it's exhausting. It's, sometimes you may write for years and be like, yeah, and this project went nowhere. So it is all of those things at once. But it's also like kind of incredibly rewarding to see what your mind can come up with. I like that challenge.
Yeah, yeah. And when you say I'm happier when I'm writing, I think that's true. I think that's just one of the truisms of writing. I know I've said to my wife more than once that if I'm in a bad mood, just ask me if I've been writing. Have you been writing? Because I'm always in a better mood if I actually getting writing done rather than life gets busy. You can go a week, you can go a month without having touched something, and then it's kind of like, okay, now it's starting to show. So what is your process when you're writing? Now let's talk pre-bookstore, because I think your life has changed probably fairly dramatically since you opened Bookish. But prior to that, when you were in the throes of writing, were you a morning, evening, afternoon writer? What was kind of your process?
Yeah, I'm typically a morning writer. I like to get up early. I don't know. Sometimes I try to sleep in, but my mind just wakes me up early. So that's a time when I feel like I can tackle things like ideas and so on. So I typically, when I'm in a writing, like I have a writing deadline, I have something I'm working toward, I'm gonna maybe 4 to 5 days a week, I'll write for a few hours at a time early in the morning. And I've done everything from like I literally had a semester I was teaching an early class, but I still wanted to get my writing in. So I'd wake up at 4 and I'd write from 4 to 6 and then get ready for class. To,
4 in the morning?
4 in the morning. I know it's
Wow.
not recommended, but
But you're a morning person. I mean, some people they have more creative instincts in the evening, some in the morning.
sure.
Are you a morning person in terms of your
Yeah,
creative impulse? Yeah.
I'm definitely a morning person, but I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, everybody has to do the thing that works for them. So for me, that's usually where I find my mind is the, most, I don't know, clear and focused.
Now that you've started Bookish and you're running a business, have you been finding time to write? And if you have been, has it changed at all, or are you still getting up early to do the writing?
Yeah, I'm still getting up fairly early. I took some time off from this to just kind of get the business up and running a little bit. Now that it's like finding its legs, I think I can get back into it a little bit more seriously. But yeah, our store's open 5 days a week, which right now feels good and manageable for us. That may change, may become more or longer hours, but for the most part, I do have a couple of hours in the morning where I can work on something. So I'm heading back into a more regular schedule with that.
Gotcha. Now, I assuming that locals listening to this podcast can come into Bookish if they want to buy one or all of your novels. Is that right?
That is true.
Okay. And you're also in for people, the vast majority who are around the country or the world. They are available on Amazon and all major book selling sites,
Yeah, pretty much.
all the big ones,
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble and Amazon and Powell's and such.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So, are you going to write more novels, do you think? You're working on a nonfiction book right now. Do you have ideas for some additional novels, or do you feel that you've got the four that you are meant to write out there, and future writing may or may not be fiction?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've really enjoyed writing in the area of nonfiction. And also, I didn't mention this, but I've kind of been dabbling a little bit in just short, like memoir type of essays that have been really interesting at this stage in my life to kind of stop, look back, think, explore, figure out why things happened. That's been also pretty cathartic. So I can't say I won't write fiction, but at the moment, it's not on my radar.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, I want to congratulate you, Paula, on the new bookstore. I plan to frequent it. I what nights are the is the live music? Is it Friday
Uh,
and Saturdays you're looking to do that?
so it's going to vary from week to week, but yeah, this week it's Friday, and we'll have thing events posted on our website.
Okay, the website will tell the tale. Well, I
Yes,
wish you all the best of luck with the bookstore. It's a beautiful place. It's in great plaza as well. I forget the name of it. What's the name of that plaza?
Roseburg Square.
Roseburg Square, yes. And you've got a taqueria right next door. I ate there after I went to see you. It was very good. And there's also Divine Swine was just bought by
Cora.
another outfit
Yeah.
now called Cora, Cora for you locals or anybody visiting. Everybody knows Modesto is a really big tourism hotspot, right? So when you visit, Cora is one of the talked about restaurants these days. Um, Again, my guest has been Paula Treick DeBoard, the proprietor of Bookish, new bookstore here in Modesto, and also the author of four novels, working on a fifth book right now. Paula, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks so much for having me. This was great.